Okay, it's early in the morning, just to crack it on ya. Bruise in the forehead, rolling on niggas, in the paint. Umbilical cords, but cut these niggas off weight. Fucking your bitch, fucking that bitch, no faint. She said that my ass, so cause she leave me with no brain. Coming up with a bitch, with precise aim. For these fuck boys and for these bitches, rolling in the roll, I roll with John with hoes. Fuck up on my shit, I see the clip with a thermoscope. Bullets they ball like Campbell Rose. Boys fuck up and these bitches leave me alone. You a dumb nigga, dumbass, hold your chest. When you walk around the block, niggas know you the best. You a little boy, you for a little boys. When you walk around the block, you got little toys. It'll be the boy, Oscar de la Ho. Bella be the pussy no, I bring the back, she blow, what you know, nigga, let me know. I got 2 blocks, switchblade to my clothes. My clothes early in the morning, just to crack it on. Me and my pockets, we break the rules in the floor. Ballin' on niggas, we break the bones in the paint. Umbilical cords, we cut these niggas off weight. Fucking your bitch, fucking that bitch, no faint.
Well, hello there.
Hello?
So I said I was going to take the Beretta out when I did the SIG versus Beretta video. I definitely still prefer the Legion over the 92G, but I really do love my 92G LTT. It's a great shooting gun, and there's nothing really not to like about it once you swap the sights out, but we'll get to that in a minute. I've put another 800 rounds through it, and not other guns, which I wanted to shoot, but I told myself, if you're going to own this thing, you better be able to run it, and that's an important justification for anything that you have. So if you own it, you better be able to shoot it unless it's really rare or just a display piece. If it's a gun that you have, you need to be able to run it.
Okay.
And in so doing, I found the 3 things that are different about the Beretta that are holding me up a little bit sometimes. One of the problems with owning multiple firearms is you have different setups, different triggers, and all sorts of other stuff. When I go out to the range with the sole purpose of running the Beretta, or for the pistol, it's gonna be the Beretta today, then I'm good. Even jumping between the Beretta and the P30L or something like that, I can run the gun no problem. I've spent so much time on Berettas that it's not really an issue for me. Although I have found as I shoot the gun that I run into consistency issues.
You know, it's alright. Guys tend to make too big a deal out of it. It's actually quite common.
I gotta go to work.
There's 3 things to consider for me, who shoots a lot of firearms, and shoots a lot of firearms well. The differences that the Beretta brings to the table that makes it a different shooting experience. When I did the comparison video between the SIG Legion and the Beretta 92G, one guy in the comments, I'll try to find it and screenshot it, but one guy in the comments said, hey, I slowed the footage down, put the guns side by side, and measured the time between shots, and there's more recoil with the Beretta, which is accurate, because if you look at how the Beretta is in the beaver tail here, it may not even come through on the video, but there's less space here and you're diving into less of the gun, into the Tang, as you would other guns. So you have the Beretta there, you have the P30, which a lot of people will say that looks almost exactly the same, but it's a little higher up in the Tang, so when you're on the gun, it sits deeper in your hand and the recoil is easier to mitigate. The SIG has much more of a beaver tail, and you get not deeper in the Tang, but it goes further. So what the guy was saying was the SIG tracked flatter in my hand and returned level back into sight alignment faster than the Beretta did for me. So it's not that the Beretta shoots bad or shoots poorly or even cycles poorly or handles the recoil poorly. In fact, it's a remarkably nice shooting firearm. But when compared to the other guns that I have, it has a little more muzzle flip because of how my hand interfaces with it while I press the shots. It's also slightly exaggerated in the video that I posted. I didn't say this in the video, I just listed the rounds that I shot. But if you go back and look at the Legion versus the 92G video, you'll see huge fireballs coming out of the front of the SIG and the 92G. That wasn't just because it was indoors, that was 127 plus P plus. So that was literally the hottest ammo that I could fire. I shot 127 plus P plus, and I shot way more Federal HST 124 plus P than I should have. Just to compare. So the Beretta tracks a little worse than the SIG for me. And if you're a Beretta shooter, that probably won't bother you because you won't have other guns to compare to. Believe it or not, there's some people that just buy one brand of handgun. It is possible. But that notwithstanding, it still shoots very well. I don't want people to hear that and say, oh, the Beretta shoots bad, or it shoots worse than the P30L or the SIG, so I shouldn't get it. That's not at all what I'm saying. It's just the way the gun's designed and the way it recoils and all that other stuff. It's slightly different and it's a little slower in my hands after I press a shot and do everything I'm supposed to do. The second thing is the double action trigger is perfect, but the single action trigger is so good, as I said before, that it's teetering on the edge of being too good for me. I guess I'm just a dumb caveman and I need something worse. The SIG Legion shoots well in my hands and the P30L shoots well in my hands, but this trigger here, I have to be 100% on my game always, which is how the Legion used to be. But if I don't do everything I'm supposed to do, I have to feel every single reset and I have to take the slack out to the same point and I have to roll through it the same exact way every time. And I know a lot of guys are gonna say, no shit, that's basic fundamentals and consistency, dumbass, but the way that it happens on this gun versus other guns I have, you cannot have any imprecision in what you're doing. Your inputs have to be flawless. And that's for my standards. That's for me to achieve really tight groups at self-defense distances from 3 yards to 7 yards to 10 yards. When I'm at the outdoor range shooting steel at 12 to 15 yards, I'm responsible for those hits. Just because the trigger's better, or just because I'm shooting steel and can be sloppier on the target just to get a audible feedback, doesn't mean that's okay. A lot of guys go to the range, they're like, oh, I hit the target. No, man, you have to be accurate and precise. There's no excuse for not mastering the gun. I also put this gun on paper and I was noticing that it was hitting lower. And there's times I'm doing drills where it hits precisely where I want it to, and then I drop random rounds, and I don't understand what's happening. For those of you that have been subscribers or just watching my videos for years, I'm no grandmaster pistol shot, but I can get some groups. I shoot pretty well. And I've been shooting for a long time now. For me to drop random rounds when the inputs are the same begs the question of what's going on with the gun. And I figured it out. I've also had this love-hate relationship, well, it's mostly a hate relationship, honestly, with Ameriglos. And I couldn't figure it out for the life of me. And it's gonna sound like an excuse, but yesterday I took somebody shooting. I didn't bring any of my video equipment. There's a young lady I work with who wants to get better with shooting. It's her second outing and she's amazing. She was anti-gun, and she got a stalker, and that's what changed her perspective, and now she loves shooting. So she's always asking me to go, and I'm not gonna bring my GoPro or any of that stuff while she's shooting. Plus, it's nobody's business anyway. But I shot my Beretta there, and it took all these outings, and it took this last, but after all the rounds that I spent, the last 50 that I shot out of this is when I figured out what's going on with the sights. And it drives me insane that it took 800 rounds because I could have saved some of that money, put it into better sights, and then enjoyed every single trigger press. Because I've shot the M9A3 before. I've rented an M9A3 so many times that I'm positive I'm getting one. I love the M9A3 or M9A4. Great gun, shoots super smooth, super flat. I hit everything I want to hit with that gun. And I was sitting there knowing that after shooting this, and I'm like, this is a better gun. Why doesn't it shoot as well as the M9A3 for me? What's going on? because I run the same ammo in the M9A3 that I run in this, which is 124, 124 plus P, or 124 NATO. And some barrels like 147s or 115s better, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, the way these sights are don't really work with my eye. This front post is perfectly square, but the way this notch is cut, there's a very small, I want to say 1/2 millimeter or 1/3 millimeter where the sight's aligned. So what had happened was I pressed the gun out, I pressed some shots, they didn't go where I wanted to go. Then I pressed it out and they went precisely where I wanted them to go. And I finally figured out that in the sight presentation, there's a very small deviation in where the sights look perfectly aligned, but they're not. Again, my caveman ass likes very blocky, very square sights. Even the X-ray sights have very defined posts, even though they're round on the outside. There's still enough of that square for my eyes to reference. And I shoot this very well. I present it the same exact way every time. I don't have that issue with the SIG. I definitely don't have it with the P30L. And with Trijicon HDs, there's enough of these square posts up here. And when I line it up, there's only one way for me to line this up. But for the Beretta with the Ameriglos sights, there's about a little bit of value where I feel like I'm perfectly aligned and it's not. And that's what was throwing my fucking shots off. And I'm furious. It's my fault because I need to do my part. So I'm not saying if you like Ameriglos, you're wrong. What I'm saying is these sights for my eye are not right. And that slight deviation is what was throwing my shots. And I realized it because the light on the indoor range caught the sight perfectly and there was a little touch of glare. And I was like, wait a second, that's not lined up. And then I made a micro, I mean an ever so slight adjustment, and I was hitting dead nuts every time. And it was at the end of the box. So between the way the gun recoils and tracks, the trigger, and how these sights are, that's what was throwing my shots off. They're my inputs, they're my responsibility. It's not the gun's fault necessarily. But those differences versus all the other guns that I have, including the M9A3, which I don't own yet, but will soon, shoot so much better, easier, and effortless for me that it's a small cause for concern. I love this gun. I love putting it in my hands. I love running it. I love getting hits with it. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to put, since they don't make Trijicon HDs for it, I'm gonna put the same Trijicon bright and tough sights that are on the M9A3 on this because my return to monkey brain won't screw it up. And I've had no presentation issues with the M9A3. I know this is older footage, but every time I pressed it out, it was right where it needed to be. Got my hits perfectly. The trigger's not as good as this one, and it was just a phenomenal gun to shoot for me. Every time I shoot an M9A3, I have a good time. When I shoot this, I generally have a good time. And when I properly align the sights, I get the hits that I'm supposed to get. And there's plenty of footage of me hitting with it, and there's plenty of footage of me missing with it. And I took this out recently, the outdoor footage, the same day I compared the URGI versus the Super Duty. I took just these two out. These were the only two handguns I took out. My Glock stayed in the holster to keep me safe while I was at the range. And I just shot these guns. This was shooting slightly low, but it was centered. And I was dumbfounded. I was like, there's no way at 15 yards I'm dropping shots that low consistently. And if you zoom the picture in, you'll see the shredded hole is below the bullseye. And then when I took the P30L and started to shoot that, it was going precisely where I was aiming. The rounds were going right behind the front sight post. And yes, there's some slight differences between how the Berettas are made, how the SIGs are made, and how the HKs are made. The SIGs and the HKs are the closest, but I was hitting where I was supposed to hit. And then with the Beretta, I was hitting low, and it's that stupid front sight with the rear sight, and it's just not lining up. Now again, all I did was the Spartan front sight with the stock rear sight. I don't know if that's also an issue, if just putting the front sight on there is what my problem is. but the rear sight wasn't in stock. So I just put the front sight on there, and I don't know if that's not properly aligned either, which is something I have to look into. It may not be an issue, and it may be so close that it's the variance that I'm seeing, which they say, meh, good enough. So long and short of it is, I'm putting Trijicon Bright and Tough sights on this, and they'll be very similar to the Meprolite night sights that come on the HKs, and it'll mitigate the problems that I have, because I've already fired them on the Beretta M9A3, and I don't have these problems with the M9A3 at all, which I've said 1,000 times. And I know you're sitting there saying, thank you for wasting all this time telling me the same 3 things over and over and over again. What does this mean? The gun's very solid, it shoots well, I've had 0 issues with it, and I enjoy shooting it. I'm going to put even more time into it now, and even more rounds into it now. So this is not the final update.
Fuck.
We're sitting at like 2,700 rounds right now. I have to put probably another 1,200 through it once I get the new sights. Am I still gonna shoot it before I get the new sights? Absolutely. I enjoy shooting it, and now that I know that that's the issue, whether I run the Surefire X300 on the end of it or not, I still run the gun very well, and half the footage is with it and half the footage is without it. So I really do enjoy this gun, and when I grab the gun, I feel the power of the spaghetti flowing through me.
Somebody touch my spaghetti!
So it's supposed to be something that I own and shoot. It's just, I run into those issues from time to time, and I've finally diagnosed what's going on with the sights, and I finally diagnosed why I'm dropping rounds. I'm not talking about I rip the trigger. I'll know when I do that. But the shooting 3 out of 5 rounds super tight and then dropping 2 for no reason at all, it's those fucking sights, man. And I am not an Ameriglos fan. If you like Ameriglos, more power to you. I'm not telling you not to run them. But for me, my eye and the way I shoot, I can't run Ameriglos on anything. Not on Glocks, not on Berettas, nothing. So it's going to be Trijicon or Meprolite, and that's how it's going to be from here on out. The gun's still running 100%, 0 issues. The finish issues are still present, but they haven't gotten any worse. But I also haven't run like another 5,000 rounds through it. So I'm going to get those sights on there. I'm going to run them, probably do an update there, and then do a 5,000 round update so you can see what's going on with the gun. I'm still shooting it, I'm still enjoying it, and I finally figured out what the issue is. So as always, thanks for watching. Take care out there.
Somebody touch my spaghetti!